Right, I think we can start now. Good morning and Happy New Year to everyone, and welcome to our very timely and relevant webinar for today, which is aimed at providing you with some information and guidance regarding the recent SolarWinds security incident and advise you on what are the next steps to protect your SolarWinds platform. So since it's the new year as well, we're actually showing our faces today. So my name is Mon Dulay, the sales manager here at Prosperon Networks, and I'm joined by our technical director, Mark Roberts. Good morning.
Helps if I press that button. Good morning, everybody.
Okay, cool. So as alluded earlier, today we will be, Mark, can you please move on to the next slides, please? Cool. So just go to the agenda section, Mark, the third slide, if it's all right. As alluded to you earlier, we will cover the following objectives following the recent SolarWinds security incident. First, we will aim to provide you with some information with regard to the security vulnerabilities, that being Sunburst and Supernova. And then the next objective will be sharing with you some tips and guidance on how to apply the SolarWinds security remediation as been advised by us and also with by SolarWinds to the compromised platforms. And then the third one would be providing you with some practice guidance on how to efficiently manage SolarWinds upgrades and patches using best practice guidance. And of course, lastly, is explore what actions can be taken to improve your overall SolarWinds security and prevent future security incidents and breaches to happen. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So we would really encourage you to ask questions along the way. Mark and I will be very happy to answer them. We've actually allocated the time because as not with the usual demos or webinars that we'll be having, we don't have a demo for today, but it's just really more of, really providing you with that guidance via some slide decks. And of course, at the end, we will be sharing some what are the resources that are actually available to you. And I know you've actually been bombarded by emails from both SolarWinds and Prosperon, and also from our support team with in last month. But we will still continue to provide you with that guidance and help because it's actually a very critical time. But before we start, just some few housekeeping items that I'd like to cover. First, as customary, we will have some poll questions along the way. So we encourage you to actually participate. There is a panel to your right where you would be able to submit your questions in real time. And will be answered, as I said earlier, at the end of the presentation. And of course, lastly, a recording of this session will be made available into our YouTube channels, and also will be sent to the attendees and also the ones that have registered for this particular webinar. Okay, cool. So next slide, please, Mark. So who are Prosperon Network? So some of you may already know about us, but for those who don't, Prosperon is a leading provider of IT management solutions, helping customers maximize their investments in your monitoring tools, whilst exploring new technologies to address your pain points. But I think more importantly, and it's very timely and relevant, is Prosperon is actually here to support you in situations like this. And I think that's one of the key differentiators of working with a partner like Prosperon, because you have that safe pair of hands to help you. So we've been helping customers deploy, tune, and train their SolarWinds people, and we've been a partner for over 15 years. And in fact, with this very recent incident, we've been working tirelessly and collaborating with the vendor SolarWinds to ensure that we provide you, our customers, with the most recent information and guidance on how to handle this particular incident. We are also an active contributor to THWAC, a SolarWinds online community forum for SolarWinds customers and users. In fact, Mark has been actively posting some information in THWAC, right, Mark, with the recent incidents, which we feel are actually very useful for our customers. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big thing. Obviously, our response was as swift as SolarWinds. A lot of customers that I see on the attendee list, good morning to you. I know that we've been directly helping with you, so this is very much about what today's webinar is about, to continue that effort and to make sure that you get the response and assistance you guys need.
Cool. Next slide, please, Mark. So this slide actually shows you a snapshot of our professional services. So for those customers that have been working with us for many years, we you know that Prosperon is actually driven by our ethos in putting our customers first, listening to the requirements and delivering them based on utilizing our experience and best practices and approach and partnership with SolarWinds. And I think with this recent security incident, Mark, it's a true testament, how we've actually worked with our customers to help them. It's either by just providing them with some guidance or going through with them for consultancy or training, future planning and training their users to be able to maintain and manage Orion later on. So we've been working tirelessly with our customers. So I think this is a good opportunity for us to highlight again and emphasize the messaging that we are here for you. We're here to actually support you.
Yeah, because it certainly wasn't the Christmas that we were expecting on our side. That usual ramp down and slow down. It got replaced by a lot of extra hours and a lot of effort from our team, and we appreciate the effort everyone else put in place into putting the remediations to secure their environments.
Yeah, so I think before I hand it over to you, Mark, for the main presentation, I just really would like to emphasize that, utilize us, use us. You have Prosperon as your SolarWinds partner to help with you. So following this presentation, if you feel that you need any further guidance with us, please reach out to your account manager or please reach out to us, to me and Mark, and we'll be very keen to actually support you and help you in terms of the next action steps. Okay?
Absolutely.
So the next slide is actually the very first poll question for today. So I would encourage you to actually participate. So our very first poll question for today is, of course, have you upgraded your SolarWinds platform yet?
Yep. So obviously we want to get some feedback, identify, make sure that there's any people that need specific guidance. We can identify those, come forward, speak to you in more focus. But just to get some interaction going before we kick in.
Yep. So
Okay,
I know, Mark, this is such a critical aspect of this particular incident, right? Because there are certain versions that are actually affected, but
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
So excellent. Okay, well, I see that's rolling in still. I see we've got a few people doing that. Certainly, it's useful to get that insight. We'll kind of discuss that and refer to that as we go forward. So thank you for taking the time for that. So just to be clear, we're not going to go into too much depth about about the response from SolarWinds. SolarWinds are handling that themselves. Today's focus is very much about giving you the guidance to understand what happened, what steps you needed to take, what steps you still need to be taking, and options and solutions that are available for you to effectively, securely, and efficiently respond and deal with this situation. So just a little bit of background. To be clear, the original vulnerability that was identified, and this was posted by FireEye, who are a security and cybersecurity company based in the States.
Mark, sorry, before you proceed, you're showing the quick poll still?
Okay. How?
Now we can see your screen. That
wasn't the button I was pressing then. Good.
Okay, cool.
So so this was on the 13th of December. So FireEye identified that their systems had been breached as part of this supply chain vulnerability. Obviously communicated with SolarWinds. It then went public same day, and so from that point, clearly a huge investigation has then taken place. From that investigation, a second vulnerability was identified. We'll go through the differences between those in these two slides, but I just wanted to make sure that people were aware that there's two out there. The first one, as I say, has been dubbed Sunburst. Now, the key thing with this, it's the supply chain attack. Essentially, what that means is the malicious code got into the code base that was then distributed to customers. This is clearly a big, impactful situation. You can see on the screen that there is a single file that's affected, the SolarWinds Orion core business layer.dll, and that had the malicious code in it, would make an external call out. We'll come onto that in a little moment, but it's a supply chain vulnerability. So you were not aware, SolarWinds obviously at that time were not aware that something and somewhere had been breached. There is no details being released as yet. That investigation is still ongoing as to how that took place. There are a number of rumours out there, all conjecture at the moment. There's certainly no evidence as yet that anyone has been confirmed to determine how it got in there. This is a clever attack profile. It was coordinated, it had capability, it had significant planning applied to it.
Mark, just a quick question. So how come, of course, antivirus is actually present in there. How come it wasn't picked up and also, protected from this vulnerability?
Well, antivirus solutions work a number of different ways. Significant ones are signatures, so they look for known malicious files, the hashes on them, the code content, etc. So because this was a file that was signed from an official vendor with a genuine certificate, it would have looked genuine. To all intents and purposes, it was genuine. So these kind of attacks are very, very difficult for endpoint security to identify and to deal with. FireEye themselves, from what I understand, were in a position where they identified it because of the behaviour that it took place. And there's intelligence within this. It was hiding itself. So not only was it hiding itself in a genuine file, but it was then mimicking genuine traffic, SolarWinds protocols for performing the improvement program. It also had internal checks. So it would be checking to see if certain registry files exist, whether it was on a certain domain, whether the machine name had test or dev in it, for example, because they know that those machines are not necessarily going to have the right access to the infrastructure, that they were probably undergoing more stringent investigations in terms of its function. So there was, let's say, this intelligence layer that would protect itself. It would only expose and perform its tasks if it knew that it was safe to do so. Right. So this is why it is one of the number of reasons why it has been very difficult to determine. So what we have within it is also that it's a very focused attack. What I mean by that is that there was a call home, a command control call, referred to as a C2 call out. The structure of it, as you can see on there, the primary one was to the AVSV MS Cloud, and it would put a sub domain as a hash, which included things like the domain that it was being sourced from, the machine name. So that was kind of helping the actors, malicious actors, to focus on who their target should be. Currently, while a lot of customers clearly have been affected, SolarWinds is indicating 18,000 at the moment. It is felt that only a number of in the hundreds have genuinely been affected by this. So this is where this whole suspicion about who has done this comes to the fore, because if this was a hacking group, they would be going after kind of monetary blackmail threats, the common situation for a hacking group, or a political purpose. So, as I say, lots of conjecture at the moment is about how that's about, but fundamentally, the risk profile is nowhere near as big as it could have been, because it made a call out, waited for instructions, and they just didn't get round to doing much to too many targets. They focused on the ones that they wanted to. So moving on to the Supernova. So as I say, part of the investigations that took place into Sunburst, it was identified that another vulnerability was out there in the wild. The delivery mechanism has yet to be determined, but this is not the same approach. This is not a same delivery method through the supply chain. this is something where there is some other vector that is injected this vulnerability. Essentially, this one appears, based on current information, that it is hiding itself in with an application to which it knows that it has access to useful data. And that's a big thing. In terms of what's happened to SolarWinds, this is going to be likely to be an attack vector, and possibly is already in play against other solutions, other vendors, because inherently a solution like Orion, things like Puppet, Chef, Ansible, all the automation tools that are out there now, to allow them to work, they need privileges to perform function. They need to be able to make configuration changes on network devices. They need to be able to make changes to virtualization settings, to change storage profiles, to move machines to another host, etc. So that inherent capability and central function, i.e. all of the resources in an environment are accessible to a solution like Orion, make it a very good target. So everything that we're kind of saying here is relevant for any other tooling that you have out there that has such capabilities, has such reach to your infrastructure, and has the permissions capability in your infrastructure. So it seems as if the Supernova vulnerability was chosen to be SolarWinds Orion and hide itself. So it's a file that is installed in the IS web server folder, inetpub, SolarWinds bin. And what it would then do is essentially provide a web API that a malicious actor could then access to send a range of commands. And again, this was a very clever piece of code because it's doing so fully in memory. It's not leaving any file system fingerprints other than that single DLL. And that DLL is a genuine DLL. It's replacing a genuine DLL. And another thing with this is that it's unsigned. So again, there are a number of profiles to this that distinguish it, and this is why they are confident that these are not linked in any way. Supernova and Sunburst are from different sources.
So Mark, just a follow-up question on that one with these two, with Supernova and Sunburst. So how with my limited security knowledge, how can you give that assurance or reassurance to the customer that these two vulnerabilities are actually separate? Is there any checks that they need to do?
Of course. So the profile of them are different. This is we've got a supply chain attack. We've got a secondary system, a secondary malicious actor, is injecting, replacing a genuine file with an unsigned file. So clearly, if you've got the capability of signing a file, you're going to follow that approach. You're not going to leave an ability for something to identify this is not a genuine file. The way that they're doing things, the methods, the capabilities, the functionality are completely different. And so, as I say, there are a number of factors that are leading everyone to believe these are completely separate in origin.
Thanks, Mark.
So what we've got here is a list of the versions that are affected by each of these. Start with Sunburst on the left-hand side. To be very clear, if you are running 2019.4, hotfix 4 and below, you are not affected. The only three versions are affected by Sunburst. 2019.4 hotfix 5, and 2020.2 and 2022.2 hotfix 1. Okay, so we'll discuss some upgrade aspects in a moment, but on the right-hand side, you can see that there is a recommended upgrade action or patch action option for different versions. Now, the Supernova one then changes the landscape. What was quite a straightforward situation with Sunburst, if you've got older versions, leave them. You are now in a situation where you still have to actively apply a fix. If you are running an older version, you will see that if you're on the 2019.4 spectrum, upgrading to the hotfix 6 will fix that. Or you can choose to upgrade all the way to the latest version, 2020.2.1, hotfix 2. So both of those upgrade paths are going to provide you the protection. For everything below that, in 2019.2, hotfix 3, you have the option of doing an upgrade, or you have an option to apply a security patch. I'll have a look at those in more detail shortly. So this table is a critical review point. You need to review your platform. So for you to log into Orion, look at the footer. There will be a section on there. It will say 2019.4, and there will be a reference to Orion Core having hotfix applied to it. Look for that, and that will confirm which version you have. SolarWinds have also released a PowerShell script, which will allow you to run it to confirm what versions you have in place as well. What we've got here is confirmation that this is focused and related only to the SolarWinds Orion application platform. All of the other SolarWinds applications, I've just listed the ones on the screen here, have been confirmed so far not to have any malicious code in them. So I just wanted to make sure that was very clear to everybody, that we are only referring to the Orion platform here. Okay, so we have these two essential indicators of compromise, IOC for short. And what you can see here that we have the file. We've provided the malicious hash for them. So this, if you run a command, I'll show you in a moment the command you can run to get visibility of this. And again, SolarWinds have also released a PowerShell script that will automate that. So essentially, you just log onto your Orion server. You need to do this on every role server, from your primary server, your additional polling engines, your additional web engine. Run the hash check or run the script and identify if any files exist. Please be aware that the file may exist in previous installers. So the recommendation is very clear to delete any previous installers. SolarWinds also store installer files in a local data file. So in C, program data, SolarWinds, installers, there are a bunch of files in there as well. They will also be scanned using that script and also recommended to delete from your system. Clearly, if you have done the upgrade, you need to run this script again. Make sure that you have cleared down everything and everything is completely gone and you are in no way left with any remnants. On the right-hand side, you can see that I've provided the list of known C2 domains. These are going to be the domains that were accessed, including some direct IPs by the platform. And so, again, what we would recommend is that you review your traffic logs, identify the level of traffic that was sent to those. Often, pretty much a lot of our customers are seeing that a call was made in their DNS logs. There was a DNS lookup, for example, on their traffic logs they can see, but that's literally just that registration function, essentially. What you are looking for is then continual traffic, and especially traffic coming the other way, to identify if any then compromise was taken advantage of. For the Supernova vulnerability, again, there is only a single file. For this, there is a single file. For the Sunburst, to be clear, if I didn't mention it, apologies. That file can exist in multiple locations. So yes, there may be multiple versions. For this, a single location, a single file. And what I've shown on here is the manual method. So this is a standard PowerShell command to output the hash of the file. So you can validate essentially this value here, this 0058, etc. That indicates to me that this is not the compromised file because that is the C15 hash output. I've also provided the link to the script that SolarWinds have provided. So that's the simplest thing. Run the PowerShell script. It will scan your system, looking for that file, doing a hash check against it, and letting you know if it finds anything and the actions to take.
As there are some useful information in there, Mark, the details of the commands and the PowerShell scripts. We will be sending you a copy of this presentation slide and also a recording, so you would have that information following this webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so actions to take. Now, I know, as I said before, that we've been helping you over the last several weeks. The customers have reached out to us. Obviously, we've been posting things on the Thwack website, on our own blog site, but you need to take actions. There are a few people on the poll that still have some actions to take place, and there are still things that you need to consider. So certainly, you need to go through and identify if you have the running version. You also, as I said, need to go through and run those two hash checks, remove any references in your system, make sure that you are running a safe version according to that version list that I showed. Get on to 2020.2.1 hotfix 2 or 2019.4 hotfix 6, or apply any of those patches. Do that. Again, run those hash checks and make sure that you are safe. We'll come on to further options in terms of upgrading and replacing, etc., in a minute to give you further guidance on that. Also, need to review your infrastructure for these IOCs. So looking at your traffic logs, looking at any communication efforts that have gone to any of the C2 domains, and also doing a best practice security review to identify if any lateral movements. So what lateral movements are in the security realm is that where a threat actor has got access to a server, in this case the Orion server, what activities did they then do? Did they then go across to other pieces of your infrastructure to make changes, to provide further access, to perform functions, etc.? So you need to look at key indicators, and these are going to be things like, has a new account been created? Have they done a first login to some of your key infrastructure? Have there been privileges escalation? So users being given kind of admin level accounts to infrastructure objects. Have new high level accounts been created? So these kind of investigations are suggested and recommended so you can identify if you have had any of that activity. As I said at the beginning, the element on this, which we take solace in, is the fact that because there was no automated aspect around this, it was a manual attack. They chose their targets very selectively. The profile of impacted organizations is much lower than first feared. So the assumption or the immediacy is to make sure that you've got your Orion application patched, upgraded. Also think about your long-term plans. So what I'm going to highlight here is that SolarWinds, we know that their release cycle is regular, every 6 months-ish, and we are coming up to a release cycle very soon. So my expectation is that between kind of February and March is that a new version will be released of Orion, and that new version will have all of the standard approach that SolarWinds have in terms of performance improvements, new features, improvements to existing function, etc. But I'm fully expecting there to be changes in terms of the security level. So I do recommend, as soon as you are able, to start looking at your longer term plans. The upgrade profile, look at if you're running older versions, if you're running 2016, 2017, 2018 versions of Orion, have a look at the new features. Bring that out into your teams, into your organization to identify, obviously you're being pushed in a much stronger way because of what's happened here to upgrade. Take advantage of that. Take advantage of the new capabilities, the new features to improve the functionality that you have available in the solution.
So are you saying then, Mark, that for those that are actually are not on an affected version, they have to ideally wait for the next release, or what actions should they take?
Yeah. So if, for example, somebody is running 2018.2 and Sunburst therefore it doesn't affect them, but Supernova does, they may decide to patch. Yeah. So keep on that same version, just patch it, make their system secure again. To deal with that Supernova issue, and then may say, okay, well, that's it. We've done our investigations. We've not had any compromise. We're happy with that. Okay. What I'm saying is we also need to, we're also recommending they review the potential to upgrade. This new version that's going to come along, as I say, my expectation is that that's going to have hardened security applied to it, and therefore is an even bigger driver to upgrade when that does come out.
Okay.
Also, because of the nature of the compromise, as I already indicated, this is targeting a platform which, by definition, needs to have escalation privileges at a level which can perform its functions that are required. And so, therefore, change all of your service accounts, change all of your passwords that are used by Orion to collect data from your environment, your monitoring data, your management functionality. So I've given some indications of those areas. We can help you identify what credentials are being used in different areas if that's required. There are some out-of-the-box reports. There are also some custom reports. So please reach out to our support or your account manager, and we can provide some additional resources. I know that one is obviously a big one, or it can be, updating service accounts, but obviously in any situation like this, risk avoidance is the name of the game. So changing those service accounts, getting them up to date is a required function. Okay, so that decision about whether to patch or to upgrade. So you can see that the patching option is the quickest. The patch release has a detailed README instruction. It's replacing files. It's, or depending on which version you have, actually, it's replacing files. It's updating some settings to apply that necessary patch. So literally, it will take you less than half an hour to apply, get yourself secured, and you need to apply that again on each of the role servers. You may take the path of doing an upgrade. And that is, as I say, is where you're doing an immediate response. Patching may be the one that you choose to do first of all, so you're not into the full upgrade, especially, as I say, if you're running an older version where a multiple step upgrade is more impactful. If you're running an old version, 2016, for example, is going to be many steps to get your platform up to the latest. So at this point, as I say, you may choose to patch, and then, as I say, start planning towards the next bigger step. The upgrade, however, if you are running version 12 something, so 2018.2 and above, it's a single step upgrade, and you can do that through the web UI, that centralized deployment upgrade. So in that circumstance, it's very quick to perform the upgrades. Yep, as little as 30 minutes. That will obviously depend on the size of your database, the modules you have, the number of pollers, etc. But even then, it is going to be a very quick process to apply. The versions below, as I say, is a multi-step upgrade. So a little bit more involved, a little bit more planning, and also may necessitate upgrading of OS. So certainly when we moved from 2016, 2017, and then the early 2018.1, they were all supporting 2008 as an OS. Again, the recommendation would be to plan to get off of that OS up to a more current operating system platform, to then install the newer versions of Orion that are safe. And this is why I've made that indication there, as this is an opportunity to review your architecture, your servers you're running it on, the topology of a deployment. Are there any scaling issues you need to look at? Are you moving your infrastructure into the cloud and therefore moving your Orion platform into the cloud? Maybe an option. There are a number of things that are considerations here. So certainly, again, with that, we are here to help. We are able to guide you and give you that information and consultancy to help you identify what measures are appropriate for you and your installation to move your platform forward.
And I think, Mark, you've also mentioned this earlier about the more strategic planning going forward, and I think it opens up that it's not just about the usual SolarWinds administrators or that's involved within this particular in ensuring that that their platform is secure, but it's also working with other teams or departments within their organization, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this is not I'm just an Orion admin, I'm going to go and apply. There are discussions, considerations across the spectrum of IT and the business. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of the upgrade, I've essentially broken this into three distinct upgrade options. The first one is that you've got your platform, you've gone through the checks to confirm that whether you are compromised, whether there are any indicators of compromise, and you're happy to keep your existing server, then this is just a standard upgrade function. And from this, it's a straightforward scenario. As you see, depending on your version, you can do it fully through the Orion web interface, or you can do the offline and run that upgrade on each of the servers. Primary one is always going to be your first one. The centralized version, it will take you through that process automatically. The upgrade advisor that is available on the portal will allow you to plumb in your database version, your OS, your Orion application versions, and it will then give you that guidance as the upgrade path. But to clarify, 2019 and above, you can do that through the web UI, go through to the settings, my deployment, and your upgrades tab, and you will then have the ability to perform that functionality there. On the newer 2020.x releases, it will have a number of additional capabilities, things like pre-staging the files if you have different additional role servers. It will allow you to do some pre-planning and validation. So it's a little bit more inclusive and advanced, but essentially everything can be done through that web console now, which is a real big advantage and why things are so quick to perform the upgrade with little fuss. Before you go ahead and do the upgrade, just make sure you've got all of your details. What servers do you have for Orion, where your database is, the database user accounts that are in use, so that if you do hit issues and you need to raise a support case either with ourselves or directly with SolarWinds, you have the ability to utilize those if we need to do an uninstall and a reinstall, and therefore they need to be put in afresh. Clearly, before you do any software installation or upgrade, make sure you have backups. You have a rollback position. So the typical advice is to do a VM backup, a snapshot, or any other method that you have, and also to take a backup of your database. Now, as you know from the customers that we engage with, our advice is to do a daily backup of your Orion database. But yeah, make sure you have a point in time, you validated it, you know. There are 3 databases, or potentially up to 3 databases, the Orion core. If you have the NetFlow module, there will be a separate SQL database for the NetFlow. For older versions, it's in the Flow storage database. That's a separate application then. And if you're running Log Viewer or Log Analyzer, there is a separate SQL database for the log data. So just make sure you have a backup of each before you progress. Option 2 is probably the one that we are looking at as a primary response. If you have any considerations about your security profile, then this is the one that you're probably likely to be taking. The beauty of the design of the SolarWinds application is that the database holds all of the configuration, all of the historic data that's been collected. Therefore, literally throwing away the application servers and reinstalling the application fresh against your existing database is essentially the same process as doing an upgrade. It's just a fresh install, and it will continue exactly where you left off. So if I was to stop my Orion server now, provision a new application server, install the same version of that against my existing database, it would probably take me about an hour from start to finish to do that. Very quick, very easy, and I would be left in exactly the same position as before I shut that original machine down. So this is something that is clearly going to allow you to throw away any potential for malicious code to exist on your application server, but carry on exactly where you left off with not a huge amount of overall impact. Yep. Essentially, the difference is you're provisioning a new server and you're running an installer file rather than doing a centralized upgrade. If you use the same host name and IP address as the original server, no changes are necessary. It will just immediately work. If you do change the host name, then some additional changes are necessary in the database. This is all detailed in the KB article on performing a migration, so please refer to that. And as I say, I'll provide the links at the end of this presentation. So just to reiterate, the expectation is that this is going to be the most commonly used method to bring the platform back up and get it into a safe position. The third option I've included because we have some customers that are in secure, sensitive arenas, and there is some guidance coming from some sources about literally doing a slash and burn approach where everything is thrown away. You shut down, you image your existing servers, and then you basically rebuild from scratch. Now, that's not something necessary that is fully necessary, perhaps. Clearly, if you have to take no risk whatsoever, then that will be your single and primary option. However, the database has not been identified as having any malicious code in it at all by SolarWinds as yet. Nothing has been reported from any of the affected users. And so while there is not absolute assurance that it is safe, there are only certain areas of that database that can be leveraged for further attack. I.e., if the threat actor wanted to put some things in place to reinfect after a cleanse process, there are only certain areas that could be leveraged. That's going to be things like your alerting engine, SQL store procedures and functions, your SAM scripts and NCM scripts. They're the only things that could possibly re-execute and reinfect. So they can be reviewed. The contents of those schema areas can be reviewed, identified if there's any potential threats, and then safe to use the database moving forward. So while this is a complete rebuild option, what I'm doing here is highlighting that kind of baby in bathwater situation is not necessarily fully necessary. And so from here, you do have an option of kind of fitting that halfway house of reviewing that database, being concerned, get your assurance to then utilize it. Clearly, rebuilding from scratch is a much bigger task to take forward. Now, various elements of Orion can be exported. So if you did isolate your current platform, there is the ability to export things like alerts, reports, SAM templates, custom Polar templates, and a few other things. For things like views and groups, we have internal scripts that can export those and for re-imports. But what I've indicated there is if you're going to kind of do accept that function to kind of expedite the remediation of restoring your installation, then you're kind of exporting that potential risk as well anyway. So I'm not sure there's a huge benefit of doing that versus, as I say, reviewing the database and then confirming that you can reuse that and then falling back to an option 2 upgrade deployment. Okay, I'm conscious of time. We need to make sure we get some good questions in. So I'll be very quick on
some
this.
Questions, Mark. So I think we should really put in some time later on. So, yeah.
Sorry, I have got my timer on my screen, so I wasn't sure where we are. Just had a look at my watch. Okay, so this does change what people should be doing in terms of their security posture. The big thing here is do not allow your Orion server to have unfettered access to the internet. I posted up on Thwack a list of the whitelisted collated view of all of the URLs that are required for SolarWinds operation, broken down into their functions. So you can pick and choose what functionality you use and need to apply to your whitelisting on your firewall. They should be applied. Remove access. Also, bear in mind that you need to make sure that you update as part of your onboarding process. So if you add new monitoring functions that goes out to the internet, you're going to need to update your firewalls to then allow that to work for continual monitoring. That's a big thing. Secondly, least minimum privileges. So this is a contentious area. Microsoft make it very difficult to utilize the WMI protocol that Orion and all monitoring solutions use for agentless Windows polling to make it not have to use a domain administrator account. There is a process. The SolarWinds official process, KB, has been brought down. My understanding from discussions is that that is being updated. There is also existing reference information which we can provide on creating a read-only minimum privilege restricted account that can be used for WMI polling of Windows servers. So if you are doing agentless WMI based polling, we can provide you information on how to do that. Also, does this mean that you look at using the Orion agent for performing polling? So not using WMI and the security impact of that, but then there are other security aspects around this. There's a whole gamut of options and discussion online about agent security, agent polling versus agentless polling. Lots of people have lots of different opinions. This is not necessarily the format to be going through on this call, but certainly it is felt that that would be an option to remove and increase the security profile. Also, antivirus. So SolarWinds had previous guidance on a range of files and folders to exclude. While this would not have been uncovered by scanning those folders and files, clearly that is something that you need to consider now. The only ones that we would absolutely say not to include in your scanning of on demand is the MDF and LDF files on SQL Server. If you do remove the folder and file exclusions from the Orion application server that may already be in place, very closely monitor the impact on performance. There is a reason why those files were excluded. because very often we see performance impact because of antivirus being over involved. Also, review your ability to do your forensic monitoring. Yeah, so these IOCs, the traffic that are being generated, the activities that are being formed, make sure you've got good data records so that you can go through them and you can identify if changes, if functionality was taken advantage of by a malicious actor. So please make sure that you review how you're doing event log monitoring, where you're storing it, how you're storing it, how long you're storing it for, because this is vital data in these kind of scenarios. SolarWinds has been affected here. This is not going to be the last time that your infrastructure is going to be compromised. So this is, say, an essential ingredient to make sure you have that visibility. I've given an indicator there of the kind of sources you need to look at. These are going to be your AD, your authentication platforms, applications, network devices, etc., your virtualization infrastructure, your cloud infrastructure, centralizing that log data so you can then analyze it, search it, forensically review it is, say, a critical response factor. Okay, so we have a second poll here. So if I can ask you just to...
The poll is up now, Mark. So will you be reviewing how you actually monitor your infrastructure due to this security incident? So we're just waiting for people to actually provide the
so while that's taking place, I'm
responses.
just going to start reviewing some of the questions that we've got coming in. Okay, so I see we have a question from Mervyn here. How was it able to get into a signed file? So I say there's lots of conjecture on there at the moment. I can't comment on that. That information has not been released, but this is why it is part of this supply chain designation of attack profile. Something between the build process and distribution. It has not been, the only thing that I have seen from SolarWinds is that it's been determined it wasn't in the coding level, it was in the build and distribution phase. So other than that, I'm afraid I don't know and I can't comment. Did this fall any firewall whitelisting also? So as I say, if you had an offline, so if your installation did not have internet access, Sunburst could not operate. It had to make a call out to the command and control center. If that server did not have that ability to make that call out, then there is no suggestion so far to say that you would therefore have been compromised. That's not to say that if you are running in an offline mode that you should not upgrade. Absolutely not. You should upgrade. You should make sure you're running a secure version. But that whitelisting, as I say, for me, is an important update to your environment for security profile. Okay, so James asked a question about if you're running an affected version that you should essentially blow that server away and build one from scratch. So that was my option 2.
Yeah.
That hopefully has answered that question, James, in the fact that that is probably our recommended point for the majority of customers. As I say, if you're in any doubt, reach out to us and we can look at yours specifically. But yes, the recommendation, rebuild your application servers, your database server remains, install against the database, you'll carry on where you left off. Yep, so I'll let you deal with Mervin's second one, Mon.
Yeah, the recording will be sent to all the attendees and those who have registered, so you'll get a copy of this, but also posted on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, okay. So Paul asked a question regarding the kind of transparency that's coming out. So far, SolarWinds are being as open as they can be, from what I'm being told. Obviously, there is an active investigation. They have not publicly revealed any findings, i.e., how did it get into the supply chain, what the source actors were. As I say, there are daily updates coming through. One of the links that I provided, there is to a kind of collated list of all kind of posts and records about this from official and non-official sources. There's lots of hearsay. It's still too early to understand in more detail. To answer your question in terms of confidence, clearly this has shaken SolarWinds. This has also, I know, has shaken a number of other vendors in these spaces. they are very aware now that they are principal attack targets, and because of the nature of what they do. SolarWinds will be going to great efforts, way bigger efforts on security, and so this is going to take a big front and center position for them. Clearly, any piece of software has been affected. You can go through the history and pick out many different scenarios, different attacks on organizations, different methods, different approaches. Everyone, and this is why you guys spend so much money on security, because everyone is vulnerable to this in some fashion. But certainly SolarWinds are doing an awful lot of work to restore that confidence. It's one of those things that this has happened to them. They're going to be going well above anything ever, and so it's one of those areas where they could be the most secure from this point forward. Who knows? No. So, Steve, to answer your question, the SolarWinds investigations into this is not complete. Again, because they haven't released any findings, they haven't completed those activities. Yes, there may be more things to come out. Obviously, the ins and outs of the legal process in terms of how they do things, they've provided their Security 8 posting, and that is the official method they will continue to use. But also in the link that we'll give in a moment, their security response page is going to be the central place to keep on top of updates and official responses. That is a single place for all of that communication.
And I think I just would like to highlight, Mark, about that reassurance that partners like us have been working very closely, ensuring that we have the information to share with our customers, and also the information directly coming from SolarWinds. So there's a bit of the confidence has gone down in terms of some of our customers, but I think it's that reassurance that as what you said to you earlier, Mark, SolarWinds with the next release, ensuring that it's going to be a bit more tighter in terms of the security within the product.
Yeah. So Alan asked the question: is it safe to use WMI filter? I'm presuming you're meaning kind of that least privilege access account using the WMI protocol rather than installing the agent. It's a difficult one because obviously a read-only account on WMI inherently is not able to perform execution functions, and so that probably is the safer one. The agent runs under a service account, which obviously could be leveraged to deploy malicious function into the organization. So again, that's one of the reasons why the agent may or may not be an appropriate security change, but certainly for some environments it will be. The reason for that is things like the communication. It's encrypted, it's secured, there's certificate-based communication, and so if a non-supply chain attack took place, that could not be leveraged in all likelihood. So, let's say there's a number of things that come into that. My immediate response to you would be that the WMI with the restricted account would probably be the best option for security. So Summit has indicated that you're still seeing files. Obviously, the antivirus vendors have upgraded their definition files, and some are misrepresenting. So they're identifying the patched and updated files, those two DLL files, as being malicious. SolarWinds are actively working with the vendors that are false identifying them to get that fixed. So if you have patched, if you have run those two PowerShell scripts, I would suggest that you can override and restore those files. But as I said, the ones under the installer folder, delete everything. Yeah, it doesn't matter. If you run the installer for Orion, it will replace them with good versions. Okay, do you want to review any further questions that I can answer while I'm reading at the same time, Mon, please?
Yep.
Okay, so
I can
Yanis,
take one of the discount pricing for the upgrades. That's something that probably, of course, as a customer. So in terms of the loyalty discounts or discounts with regard to this one, not related to the upgrades yet, but you could probably see if you have an upcoming renewals, there's been a loyalty discount that's being applied for some customers. But if it's about pricing, please talk to your account managers and reach out to us. We can always talk about the pricing. The important thing is you engage with us, and we support you in terms of this a particular situation.
okay.
It's also
Um,
related reduced pricing in terms of renewals. I did answer that already. So yeah, that's a question from James and Dean. Yeah.
so Yanis asked about their installation. I kind of answered that previously with regards, anything that the SolarWinds PowerShell scripts detect, remove, deal with as it suggests. But yes, upgrade. Yeah, get onto one of those safe versions, whether it's the lower, whether it's the patched version, or the current version. Absolutely, that is the full recommendation. Martin asks about logs, how to go back for. This is a difficult one because obviously when it came out on December the 13th, this reflected back several months as to when it was first injected. So the best practice, the compliance, the PCI, the SOX, there are framework guidance on that. So if you are in an industry that is affected by a compliance framework, please refer to that. But my suggestion is a minimum of 1 year should be your target for your event log data. So James, discussion again about the deployment of the agent. I don't fundamentally believe that we're going to be changing our posture on the use of agent versus agentless polling. As I've already said, fundamentally, the agent can be made, the WMI restricted account be made more secure, but then you lose functionality items around that. So if you need to be executing scripts to collect data from your Linux environment or using PowerShell, then inherently you need that capability and that permission. This, as I say, is the problem that has been raised by this situation for all monitoring and management solution vendors, because you need those permissions to perform that function. So no, it's not changing our position. I literally just highlighted that from a security viewpoint, the WMI can be made slightly more secure.
Mark, just in the interest of time, because we only have 2 minutes left, and I think you need to show the references later on. For
Yeah.
for those questions that we haven't actually answered, would you be able to? We would be responding to them individually if that's all right, through
Yeah,
the account
absolutely. So,
managers, if that's
any
fine.
questions that I've not got to or don't have time to get
Yeah.
to, take offline and contact
Yep.
you directly.
Yep.
But
Of
if
course.
there are any questions, and I really stress this, if you have any questions from this incident in terms of your installation, what you should change, how you should react, etc., please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to provide that assistance to you.
Cool. So I think the poll results are also up, Mark. So I think this is a good way for us to actually end and summarize the webinar for today.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so just a quick one here, Martin. So it said if I run the scripts and remove the files, and I presume you've already patched, do I still need to rebuild the server? That was that option one. If you've reviewed and you're confident that you weren't compromised, then you could leave that platform. For those customers that want to take the risk avoidance, then rebuilding the server would be a suitable option. As I say, that would remove any potential for remnants to exist, and so that would be a kind of personal choice. The fundamental is if you've patched and you're secure and you've put your internet access into restricted mode, then the kind of risk profile has been significantly reduced. It's whether you want to go that further step. Okay, I think we're at time, are we not, Mon?
Yes. So we'll. I think the poll responses actually clearly illustrates that, of course, naturally there will be a lot of the organizations will be reviewing the monitoring tools, but I think the more important thing here is us, utilizing a partner like Prosperon, or reaching out to your account manager and to us to really, work with you in terms of, if you're going to be doing the review, or really extending to you that assistance that's needed to take on the next action steps for you to ensure that your platform is secure, Mark.
Yeah,
Fair enough, isn't it?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
So I think there are some. There will also be some further reading and resources that are actually available on the slides. So what we're going to be doing is we'll aim to provide you with a recording of this webinar as soon as possible. But otherwise, if you need the slides from us, there were some that actually requested it urgently. We'll send it to you. But please reach out to your account managers or to me and Mark, and then we can provide you with that information. So thank you so much, Mark, for your
No,
time today, for joining us for this very timely and relevant webinar. But also, big thanks to the attendees.
yeah,
It's the first week of the year, and I know we're all very busy, but you really found time to actually join us. So, um, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar. So,
yeah. Thank you for your
thanks,
attendance. So,
everyone. Thank you.
hope
Bye
it's been
bye.
helpful. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.